You clicked I agree to the terms of service at least a dozen times this month. New subscription, new software, you read 0 of them. And what if I told you the terms you accepted this morning give a company more power over your content than most governments have over your property? And that's not your fault. These agreements are designed to be unreadable, and what's buried inside them may genuinely surprise you. Today, I'll cover 2 of the worst clauses buried in those terms. One lets the company use your content for free, another lets them change the deal after you've signed it. And this surprises even lawyers who don't deal with public terms every day. Hi, I'm Pavlo, a lawyer experimenting with YouTube to show you where legal risk actually hides, where the system fails, and how to use AI to your advantage. Stay until the end. I'll share what's easy and within your control not to be a victim. The common assumption, the terms of service are a formality, boilerplate, legal noise. And honestly, that's reasonable. A Deloitte study found 91% of consumers accept terms without reading them. And for people under 34, that's 97%. Researchers at Carnegie Mellon estimated it would take an average person 76 working days, nearly 4 months of full-time reading, just to get through the privacy policies and the terms of service they encounter in a single year. And put that in perspective, the US Constitution, the Magna Carta, and the European Union Charter of Fundamental Rights combined 15,000 words, while the average social media terms of service 27,000. So one platform's user agreement is almost 2 times longer than 3 foundational documents of Western law put together. The actual number of people who read terms of service is not small, it's 0. And that's not me, that's Professor Omri Beer-Shahar, University of Chicago Law School, and he studies this for a living. The other 3 or so percent, mostly lawyers. And honestly, outside of client work, most of us skim too. There is an old joke about a man who finds a clause buried in his bank contract saying that the bank can brand its logo onto the client's forehand, and the clerk's response, "That's standard." That's funny until you realize that some of what you actually accepted isn't that far off. And let me show you 2 of the most outrageously disadvantageous clauses that tend to surprise people. I came across an article on Meta's updated privacy policy and decided to check the source myself. I opened Facebook actual terms of service and found this. And I could feel now that your eyes starting to bleed. So let me translate. You grant Meta extensive rights to use everything you upload. Transferable and sublicensable means they can pass those rights to others. Create derivative works mean they can transform your content into something completely different. And royalty-free, I bet you got that right, they don't owe you a cent. And in 2024, Meta updated its policy explicitly stating it uses public user content to train generative AI models. So your photographs, your writing, your videos, anything that qualifies as creative work under copyright, training data for their AI. And you already agreed. One important note, I'm only talking about copyright today, your authorship right in what you create and upload. Personal data protection, the rules around your name, face, your behavior is a completely separate legal regime with separate laws, and that deserves its own video. And here's the thing, it's easy to point fingers at Meta, but step back and look at where incentives lead. If you're a platform with 2 billion users, uploading creative work for free, and the most valuable technology of the decade runs on training data, the question isn't why they did it, the question is which platform wouldn't? So, your creative work, their training data, $0 to you. Which makes you, depending on how much you upload, potentially the most generous investor in Silicon Valley. So that was clause 1. You're giving away your creative work for free, but at least the clause was there when you first signed up. And what if the deal itself changes after you already agreed? Most platforms' terms include a clause like this: we may modify these terms at any time at our sole discretion with or without notice. So you accepted version 1, tomorrow company publishes version 2 with new restrictions, new uses, new limits on your rights, and your continued use counts as acceptance. No I accept button, just silence. At best, an email saying, we've updated our terms. And this is not theoretical. In December 2012, Instagram updated its terms to allow businesses to pay to display your photos along the ads. A commercial use, no compensation to you. The backlash was massive and Instagram reversed within days. But legally, under Instagram's existing terms, users had already granted broad rights to use their content. The update was within the rights they were already given away when they first clicked I agree. So how do regulators in court look at this? In the European Union, the European Commission forced Facebook in 2019 to amend its terms, to acknowledge liability for negligence, stop disclaiming responsibility when third parties mishandle your data, and limit unilateral changes to those that are reasonable and account for user interests. In the UK, Ofcom banned mobile and broadband companies from using inflation-linked mid-contract price rises in 2024. The same legal mechanism just applied to your bill instead of your content. And from 2025, any price rise must be stated in pounds and pence up front. In the US, it's less clean. March 2025, the Fourth Circuit struck down a credit card company clause that let it change any terms at sole discretion. The court called it so one-sided and vague that it deprived the agreements of any meaningful reciprocity, but the clause was illusory. But here's the catch. If you are in the United States, your rights depend on your state. There seems to be no consolidated practice. In Miracle Pond versus Shutterfly, an Illinois court upheld a unilateral modification clause because the original terms explicitly permitted it. So same issue, different state, opposite result. So on the one side of Atlantic, regulators in the EU and UK are pushing back. On the other, the system is fragmented. Your rights depend on which state you are in and which judge you land in front of. You might be thinking, if these clauses are so bad, why doesn't someone just not agree? Two reasons. One, these companies often have no real alternative in their niche, so they don't compete on friendlier terms. Two, you'd need a Juris Doctor or a PhD to fully understand these terms, and no guarantee that it won't change next month. And not using the service isn't realistic for most professionals in 2026, so that's where the actual leverage sits. There is a quote often attributed to Einstein: if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. With the terms of service, the opposite is true. Companies understand their own terms perfectly. The complexity is the point. The complexity of terms of service isn't an accident of legal drafting, it's engineered. As developers would say, it's not a bug, it's a feature. Make an agreement short and clear, people read it, they object, they negotiate, they walk away. Make it a 47-page of dense legalese, nobody reads it, nobody objects, and you can put almost anything inside. A 90% non-reading rate isn't a failure of consumer attention. It's the system working exactly as intended. Complexity is the compliance mechanism. And to be fair, this isn't about corporate malice. Maintaining multiple versions of agreements for different users isn't practical. No platform wants to block millions of users who didn't click I accept. And these are profit-making organizations weighting revenue against cost. And if the regulation is unclear and your competitors are doing it, you can't afford to give up the advantage and lose the market share. The real problem isn't any single company. It's the regulation that isn't concrete enough to make everybody play by the same rules. Until the rules are black and white and equally enforced, rational actors will keep pushing the boundaries. And here's where AI makes it worse and potentially better. Worse, AI can now generate longer, more complex legal documents faster, hiding real things even better in legalese. But better, AI can read those documents for you in seconds and surface risks in plain language. So what do you actually do with this? One action this week: pick one app you depend on, personal life or business, find its terms of service, paste them into any AI you use, and ask, what risk or disadvantages do these terms create for me? And see what it spots. If you've got a business negotiating power, push for a fixed contract instead of accepting general terms. There's better predictability, no supervisory rights. If it's really important to you, maybe talk to your lawyer. That's the starting point, no panic awareness. And no, this isn't a legal advice, it's a common sense advice. Now you know what's among the worst you're accepting blindly. And next time you click I agree, maybe you'll pause, even if for a second. And that second matters. And if this video earned that pause, subscribe. We're looking into legal systems that run our lives one question at a time. And if you come across any aggressive clause that you had to take or leave, drop it in the comments. And this could become the best crowdsourced collection of the worst legal clauses on the internet. Next video, if you're using AI to create content for work, you might not own any of it. The copyright system has a gap that affects everyone using GPT, Gemini, Claude, or any AI tool professionally. So, see you there. And remember, you don't need to be a lawyer to protect what's legally yours.